the US political situation. There's plenty going on. We're joined by Joe Lauria, Editor-in-Chief at Consortium News and former Wall Street Journal and Sunday Times of London correspondent.
And we're fortunate that Joe is travelling here from Washington just this week, and it's been very quiet in the United States.
Yeah, nothing going on.
To duck out of there. Now, look, Bernie Sanders just said about the screwing up in Iowa. I would have thought that the whole thing was shambolic.
It's a disaster for the Democrats. I think a disaster for Pete Buttigieg because he announced that he'd won before one vote had been counted. And then it turns out that the wife of one of his advisors is involved in the company that made the app. He also, his own campaign invested in it. It's raised all kinds of questions and rumors about what this was. Was it an honest mistake or was there something else going on? So whatever it was, it looks very bad for the Democrats. They did not have a good week.
Well, I tell you what, it's very interesting, isn't it, the whole Iowa caucuses, how everyone sort of stands up and it's all very public compared to the primary. For people that are not aware of this situation, talk us through a bit of
It's a really complicated system because they gather in a room together and they vote publicly and openly, unlike a secret vote which you'd have in a primary election. And then they don't, it's not just how many votes you get. As Bernie Sanders has been saying, he got 6,000 more votes. That should be the winner. But they've got a system somewhat like the electoral college where the less populated rural areas get more votes towards the delegates. And both have 11, and that's really why it's a tie in Iowa.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump holding up newspapers and Nancy Pelosi ripping up speeches. He is now at 49%. Look, any question as to whether this impeachment and failed impeachment was going to help or hinder him, it's helped him.
It has, and that's the gamble the Democrats took. They knew they were not going to remove him because the Senate is majority Republican. They thought he could go into the election wounded, but there was also the risk that he would get a bounce, and that's what happened with Bill Clinton when he was impeached. His supporters rallied behind him. So that was a failed strategy. I think that the problem is what an impeachable offense is very vague in the Constitution. So whether he should have been impeached for that or more serious things in terms of taking Syria's oil or declaring settlements in the West Bank as legal, these are all violations of international law. They just ignored that and went for some phone call, basically, and then Joe Biden should have been investigated, in my view. So
it's very interesting, isn't it, because from the start, Nancy Pelosi was reluctant to go ahead with the impeachment inquiry, and now it's pretty much backfired.
That was the reason I think she was reluctant.
Absolutely.
She had the right idea, at least before she ripped up that speech. But anyway,
that was childish, wasn't it? That was really a jump the shark moment. I was really surprised.
Well, you know, the State of Union addresses are all stage managed. This one was particularly well stage managed. He's a showman. Trump, he pulled it off. It was effective, and she knew she'd lose the next day, the vote. And to do that for her base, to rile them up, but anybody looking objectively, nonpartisan as we are at Consortium News, see that as a terrible stunt, really. That's not the way to go after your political opponent. You do it in an argument, you know, not by that kind of a
Yeah, now Donald Trump is saying it's a criminal act.
Well, did he say that?
Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit too much, I think.
Mitt Romney, he was the first GOP senator to vote against Donald Trump, but was that expected?
I think many people thought he might. It wasn't sure, but I also think he may have in the back of his mind challenging Trump in the primaries, because you can challenge a sitting president. So that's why I think he needed to carve his way out of there and take a stand.
He's maintained, him and his team and the machinery in and around the presidency has maintained their stand the whole way through that impeachment. They're saying this is a sham, this is a distraction, this is fake news, there's bigger things happening, there's China, there's this, and they just haven't moved off it, and it's worked for them.
Yeah, the Republicans stand.
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, the way that President Trump and his team.
Well, I think he's right. I think the public realized that this was not. This is the way U.S. Carries out foreign policy. They use the leverage they have with aid. They withhold aid. There's a whole history that I can go through with you, where government officials tell a country, if you don't do what we want, we're going to have to give you the military aid. There's even Obama. There's a famous interview in which he said that we could twist arms. So that's what Trump did here. He made a blunder. That should be the Department of Justice that asked for this investigation of Biden, not the president. There's a wall between the Department of Justice and the White House. That was a mistake he made. I don't think it was an impeachable offense. As I named a few other things, I think there were impeachable offenses he may have. But there's a kind of cover-up in Congress on some of these big international things that the U.S. does around the world, a kind of aggression that America can show. That's not discussed for the American public. That is buried, and they went after, I thought, a flimsy charge, and he won. You know.
Moving forward, okay, so getting back to the Iowa caucus, Joe Biden came in fourth. He needs to win South Hampshire, doesn't he, to have any sort of gain?
Right, but I think he'll stick around for South Carolina because he's doing very well there. African Americans like Biden more than anyone else, and that's a largely African American state. So if he loses South Carolina, he's finished.
And with Michael Bloomberg, do you think that was a good call for him actually not to participate in the Iowa caucus as he's saving himself for Super Tuesday?
Well, it's interesting because this whole Iowa debacle has called into question whether they will go first next time. And it's just about the narrative. Who wins that is the front runner. There hasn't been a front runner, so that's what's important. But the real delegates, of course, are on Super Tuesday, and that's what you need to get nominated. So logically, he's making a good argument, but I think he's far behind. I don't see how he's spending huge amounts of money on advertising.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's enough. I'm from New York City originally. He was the mayor, so and I worked at Bloomberg News for a while too. So and I used to see him walking around on the floor there. I don't think he has a chance, in my opinion.
Him and Trump hate each other, absolutely hate each other. But the whole Democratic thing needs to crystallise sometime soon. I know it's a long year, but it needs to tighten up. We need to work out what they stand for. Who, you know, get down to who is possibly going to be the person that can take on Donald Trump, who is more popular now than when he came to power.
Yeah, I think they have to coalesce behind the best person who could beat him. I think it's probably Bernie Sanders because he's surging. And he goes for the same kind of voters that went for Trump, working class voters who feel screwed by the system and they were angry. And Trump was able to very effectively get those people to vote for him. How much he delivered for them or not, despite what he said in the State of the Union, is really up for grabs. I'm not sure. But Bernie has certainly got this huge youth movement behind him and working class people behind him. So they're going to fight for the same votes. That's how Hillary basically lost, because she ignored those votes in the Midwest of working class people.
Very interesting indeed. We've got months ahead to till November. Thanks very much. Where do you go back to the States?
I'm going on to Norway after this.
Okay.
I'll be back in the States a couple of weeks after that.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Safe
Quite
travel.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
All right.